All right, guys. We're sitting here today with Ted from Cora, and I'm sure most everybody on here knows who Ted is. But Ted, if you want to just give us a real brief, who you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how long you've been doing it all in 27 seconds, that'd be awesome.
All right. Well, I date back to the beginning. So I had the office across the hall from Mark Andreessen at the National Center for Supercomputing Applications at the University of Illinois.
Oh my.
If you don't know who Mark Andreessen is, he founded Netscape. He authored the first graphical web browser at the U of I. If you've never heard of Netscape, well, welcome. You're kind of new.
Kind of young too, right?
Yeah. And that's okay. Because the cool thing about SEO is that you're always just 2 years away from state of the art. So whether you're new or old, it's very easy to become the best in the industry. You can totally do it. And today I'm going to show you some software and I'm going to drop some knowledge. So whether or not you buy the software, you will hopefully find some awesome information in this presentation.
However, there's a good discount at the end, so stick around. All right, so everybody ready to go? Give me a 1 if you're ready. All right, one. Josh, Tall, Paul, Keith. All right, Keith is here. Mike Sales here. All right, great. All right, let's go ahead and start.
Okay, so the big announcement is Cora7 Pro has just been released to anyone who's using Cora. So all new customers, all existing customers can get it. So I want to talk about what is Cora7 Pro briefly. So I have a few slides and we'll get through that quickly. And then we can look at some data and maybe run some volatility reports and get into some general information that's useful whether or not you use Cora. So we'll get through what is Cora first. It's software for PCs and Macs. You run it on your desktop. It's going to create reports. So Cora7 Pro creates Excel reports. And what you're seeing here is the user interface that lets you do a lot of different things, that lets you sculpt the advice you get back from Cora. And over here on the side is our famous roadmap. This is the Cora7 roadmap. It's broken into phases. So you got phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Don't worry about reading it yet. We can look at that closer later. But the general idea with Cora is you put in a keyword in your URL and you get back a report on what you need to do to your URL to make it competitive for that keyword. And so the general strategy is you tackle phase 1 first, which is usually pretty easy. You wait and see how Google responds. Then you tackle phase 2, which is a little bit harder. And then you wait and see how Google responds. And then you do phase 3, which is really hard. And as you go through the phases, they get harder and harder and harder, but you've already applied the 80-20 rule. So you're going to get the 80% ranking boost from the early phases, and you're really going to fight for that last 20% with the hardest stuff to tune. And so Cora kind of figures out what factors are important, how short your page is, and each of them gives you very exact advice. And that's kind of what it is in a nutshell. A lot of people will note that there's Cora Lite and Cora Pro, and they want to know which one is right for me. Well, Cora Lite is for tuning main content. So if the only SEO you're going to do is in the article you're writing, and you're not going to tune any other parts of the page, then Cora Lite is what you want. But if you're a professional SEO, and you are going to compete against the best SEOs in the industry for the hardest keywords there are to compete for, and you plan on tuning everything everywhere you can because it's that vital to you, then Cora Pro is your tool set. And today we're talking about Cora Pro. So those are the differences between the two products I offer. All right, so Cora7. So people remember Cora 6.9 and earlier, and Cora 6.9 and earlier could measure up to 2,200 different factors. Cora 7 is entirely new architecture. It uses a system of factor detection. We detect things while Cora is looking at the top 100 results, and Cora can say, oh, haven't seen that before. I wonder how it correlates. And it'll correlate it in real time as it scans through the pages. And because of that, the amount of factors we found are through the roof. So Cora is capable so far to date of measuring over 13,000 different on-page factors that appear to influence rankings. And so that breaks down to 12,500 that are built in, and the rest need third-party APIs. 7,500 of them are on-page factors. Also new in Cora 7 is the ability to do map search for local SEO. So almost 5,000, we're at 4,993. So probably in the next day or so, we're going to eclipse 5,000. Almost 5,000 of the factors we measure are specific to Google business profiles and map search. I mean, take that in for a moment. Like, for the past several years, everybody has been telling you local SEO is keywords in your business name and proximity, and maybe ratings and reviews. But there are 5,000 things we can measure. And one of the things we look at is factor diversity as a factor. And what we found is that factor diversity is one of the most important factors to Google and has been for almost 2 years. So how many different ranking signals are you using? As a factor has been the strongest factor. And we're finding the same thing with the local data. Your completeness of profile appears to be very, very important. It may not be the most meaningful impact, like keyword stuffing the business name, but it is something that you would be crazy to not make sure that you are getting all your applicable switches. And so Cora will tell you which things your competitors have that you're missing. And we still have our API integrations for off-page and backlinks. We've brought back the Wapalizer API. It's improved. So now you can look at components of your technology stack to see if they impact your rankings. So that's another trick you can do. We also share these factors. These are astronomical numbers, and there's no reason why you should believe the numbers just because I'm stating them. We actually publish the shared data. All of our Cora community shares factor data anonymously to the server, and that gets fed back into Cora reports so we know how factors behave across thousands of different keywords. Well, that data is publicly available. We publish it at no cost as a community service. So anybody can go and look at the Cora shared data. It resides over at Top SEO Factors, and you can go and view most of these factors there. You can't view them all yet because we're still getting critical mass on local factors and Bing factors. But once we do, we'll publish them there too. They're just not ready yet. But most of these factors you can actually find at topseofactors.com, and that's totally free.
Hey, Ted, let me ask you a question. How
Sure.
many of you guys that are here today are looking for information about your site or your Google business page? Because that's kind of relatively new. For how long has it been since you've been doing the Google business pages? For Ted? You still there, Ted?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, I was asking you. I was
Oh,
asking, yeah, Ted.
sorry, I was expecting to hear from
Well,
the audience.
well, we're getting this
Um,
stuff from the audience. Most of them are saying both. See them say both,
yeah.
right?
And so yeah, absolutely. Like this capability of local is brand new. And
Right.
and I know that people are gonna say, well, Surfer could do local, but not really. What they were doing at the time was they were scraping the local results and then doing an on-page analysis, which is very different than getting all of the business profile data and correlating those discrete fields with ranking. So it's like all those past other implementations felt really dirty to me, like they weren't true like local SEO analysis the way I would want it. And I could have done that dirty analysis, but I didn't. I didn't want to charge people for that because I didn't think it was right.
Right.
Now, they were open about what it was. They didn't mislead anybody, but I didn't want that to be my product. And
Here's
now,
an interesting question from Terry. He says GBP and maps listings.
yeah, because they all kind of get commingled in map search. Like you see your rating and your review count and your photos and all the switches you set up and your profile and your primary category and your multiple subcategories and just like all of those discrete fields, they all need to be correlated with rankings because any one of them could be a factor or might be a factor in the future. So if you weren't measuring all those little fields, then it wasn't really a local analysis. And so I didn't want to do a local tool until I could get that data. And
Gotcha.
now we have all that data, and there's almost 5,000 of those things that you can tune that are popping up in that data.
Some of
And
that data relate to the actual Google business page.
yes,
Wow.
and so it's very important that when we look at like ranking well for local SEO, that we are in fact analyzing all those discrete fields of data. And there are a few things I haven't been able to get to the heart of yet, but I'm working on it. Like some of the things I haven't addressed in local yet is like driving directions. Like, for example, when we look at proximity, everybody's doing this as the crow flies math between latitude and longitude coordinates. And so they're like, I know how far the distance is from the searcher as the crow flies, but Google's not using that number. Google knows the minimum drive distance, and Google knows the minimum drive time. So they actually have two factors that aren't as the crow flies, which is what everybody else is doing. So I'm working on fixing that, but it's a really big problem. Another area that isn't quite solved yet is local guide levels. So there's a lot of people that believe that, if you get a really high local guide level person to engage with your listing, that might somehow boost you. So we're looking at the places where those things come into play. What about local guide levels for photos? What about local guide levels for reviews? What types of engagement signals from these local guides with various levels can we measure and report on? And so we're trying to tap into those dimensions of local too. So those are on the horizon. but there's just so much there that I look at, kind of the cheat methodologies of doing local analysis from the past, and I'm like, those are woefully inadequate. Now that we have the data, my instincts were right. That was woefully inadequate. And so, yeah, I'd like to show some of that. Absolutely. Another thing that I do with Cora these days is I try to push my customers through like at least an hour of training. It's all too common that people get Cora and they assume that they're an expert because they're a gifted SEO and that they don't need help with learning SEO tools and they can wing it, and then they have a hard time and they don't get the result they want and they cancel and they move on. And so that path I want to stop. What I found is that people that just get an hour with me when they get the software, we look at their settings, we make sure they're configured properly. I walk them through how to use the AI, give them tips, let them know, what to do in the process I do so that they hit the ground running. Then I'll show them, we'll run a report, we'll make sure it's working on their system, and then we'll look at the data and we'll, go over how to use it. I'll explain the reports, and a lot of people, Cora does so much, a lot of people get overwhelmed. They're like, oh, it's too much. And you can kind of tell who's had the training and who hasn't based on their declarations of being overwhelmed. Because in that hour of training, I bring it all back down to her.
Okay.
But if you try to wing it, then yeah, you might feel overwhelmed because you don't know how to read it.
Okay, so I want to make sure everybody just understands what you just said. Okay. I think I heard you say 3 times an hour of training. So give me, everybody in the chat, give me a 1 if you understand what that means. Seriously. Hour of training means you personally, one-on-one with the people that are going to be using and buying Cora Pro, correct?
Yep.
Are you insane?
Yes. No, nobody else in our industry does this. And I do it with every single one of my customers if I possibly can, if they'll let me.
I mean, give me a 100 if you guys think that's awesome. And I mean, we do the same thing when we can, when we launch new products through a webinar. We're not one-on-one. We do, webinar to as many people as we can, because, man, you are just investing in your membership, aren't you?
Yeah, people, the thing I get criticized the most for is it's not pretty. Like, people go to other tools, and it's so much prettier. Why don't you invest in UI? The reason I don't is because I'm investing in is there a real SEO advantage here? Do I genuinely believe I can make you destroy your competitors? Yes.
Right.
If you see it through my eyes, there is real advantage to be had here.
Awesome.
And then secondly, I want to help people. Like, I want to help you do what I do. I want to take what I do and not make it mystical, magical shamanism. I want to show you what I see, show you how I do it. I want to tell you all my secrets, and I'm known for just giving all of my secrets away, and that's what I love about this industry. I love helping people. And so really my favorite parts of my job are when I help somebody new learn the tool, and then they come back a few days later and tell me how they're kicking ass. That's it. That's the 1-2 punch that gets me up in the morning ready to do it again. And so, yeah, I want to share that as much as I can, but there's a caveat, and this, you'll hear me say it again and again and again going forward. Advantage isn't for everyone. Some people say, oh, well, that's work, or there's you mentioned something that sounded like math, so I'm out. Or I saw the amount of data in the report and I said, screw that. I hear those things all the time. And my reply to that is advantage isn't for everyone. It's not an easy button. Anyone who's selling you an SEO easy button is just trying to fleece you. You have to think. And like any tools, you have to learn to master them. It's just one of those things. And I can help you do that. I feel that I've helped really good SEOs become, some of the best SEOs in the industry. I take good SEOs and I make them great SEOs. But you have to be a good SEO to begin with, and you can't be afraid of thinking. And so that's kind of the entry. And if you're put off by what I do and what I'm offering, that's okay. I'm okay with that. My answer to that is advantage isn't for everyone. It's hard work.
Amen. Wow. All right. We need to take a breath after that one. That was awesome. So why don't we go into, the report and kind of give everybody a taste of what you're talking about.
All right. So in Cora, there's a ton of reports. So this is the start of the overwhelm. There's these files that can be created and there's these outputs. And so there's a lot here. But the thing I want you to know going into it is that even though we're giving you data on all these things, all right, I just want you to spend 95% of your time in one of them. Just the roadmap. Because everything else that's here is just there so you can dig deeper in areas if you need to. It's all reference material. So if you're in the roadmap and you know that you have a schema problem, we have more detail on schema. If you're in the roadmap and you know you have a deficit in sentences, well, we've done an analysis of that if you want to look at it. If you're in the roadmap and your keyword density isn't right and you want to dig deeper into keyword, well, we have that for you. But where you're going to compete is in that roadmap.
Some people can't see your screen.
Oops.
There. Okay.
There it is. All right.
You good?
So
okay.
let me hide the slides. Let's just put the slides away for now. And let me open up a report.
Everybody let me know if you can see the report, okay? When he opens it.
Let me find one I'm allowed to share. Some aren't my keywords to share. 1 second while I open it.
Ted, while you're doing that, can I add something?
Sure.
First time I looked at a Cora report, I was like, what the hell? And I wasn't thinking hell. Because it looks complicated and it is easy to be overwhelmed by it. But when you, like Ted said, if you just look at the roadmap, for instance, it tells you what you need to do to your page to get up there with your competitors and to pass them. And if you're willing to put in that hour with Ted, you'll understand it. You'll look at it and go, oh, this is what I need to do to beat that guy or gal. This is what I need to do for that keyword. And suddenly there will not be keywords you are afraid of. You're no longer going to be going, I need to find something with low competition and high search. Like everybody in the world's not looking for that. You can go, no, bring it on. I'm ready. It's an amazing tool. It's at least twice as good as it was in version 6.9. The addition of the local is big. The volatility, I mean, it's almost ridiculous how much is packed in it now for less than you would have paid for those tools, a month ago. So if you want to be a great SEO, take the time, spend an hour with Ted with the tool, and you'll be amazed.
Thank you, Terry.
Terry,
So-
can you see the screen? I want to make sure. Okay, want to make sure everybody sees it. Thank
I
you.
can see it fine, yes.
Awesome, Terry. Thank you for popping in, man.
All right, so I pulled up a search for DUI lawyer Los Angeles. And so what I want to point out here are these words that Google is making bold. And so I put in lawyer singular, but it's highlighting lawyers plural. And I said lawyer, but it highlighted law. And if we continue down here, let's see, it highlighted criminal defense lawyer. That wasn't my search term. And attorneys, that's different. And so what we're seeing is that it's getting related terms. They're not exactly my search terms. They're not substrings of my search terms. They're related. And we call these bolded terms that appear in search, we call those variations. And so we like to measure those variations everywhere they occur, and we report on them. And so it's very important. So there are two kinds of matches we look at. We look at the exact match of what you typed into search, but we also look at these variations, which includes the exact match, but there's more to it. And so we collect those, and in the report, we list them. So we have this list. So this report is for top SEO factors, and these are all the variations for top SEO factors, including the exact match. So when we say in a factor, the variations in the title tag, add one more, that could be any of these variations. So you have some degrees of freedom to make it look natural and not just be only exact match. And so variations in H1 tags, add 3 more. Let's see, variations in H1s, H2s, and H3s, add 3 more. Now, this could be, when you start seeing factors like this, you could address this by adding 3 variations to 1 H2, or you could add 3 new headings if you wanted to address it. There's multiple ways to solve it. And if you added those 3 variations to an H1 up here, you would have solved this one at the same time. So oftentimes when you fix one deficit, you're addressing multiple at the same time. And so this is phase 1, it's titles and headings, and we like people to get those in line before proceeding with SEO. And so we want you to address your phase 1. And if there's a lot to do in phase 1, like there is in this case, I might do it as like 2 different passes so I don't trigger a Google dance. Google dance, it turns out, is just when you change too much of your page all at once, and Google has to reprocess the whole thing to find out if your keywords are still appropriate. So if you want to avoid Google dance, you take small bites. You do small amounts of change, let Google respond, take small amounts of change, let Google respond. If you do trigger a Google dance, if you change everything all at once, what ends up happening is your page falls by 80 places, and your employer and your customer come to you screaming, "What the hell did you just do?" But if you're an experienced SEO, you know what's going to happen. You're going to come back to the same place or higher because you made your tuning better. And so when testers like myself or Lee Witcher or Terry Power or other testers, when we trigger Google dance, we often start doing high fives. But if you're doing client SEO, you want to avoid it. And the way you do it is taking small bites. And so we give you very specific advice, add 11 more of this factor, add 2 more of that factor. And so the thing about that is Cora isn't dealing in opinions. Like you might look at something like, let's find an egregious one here that people can object about. let's talk about variations in P tags right here. So using that keyword list from the top and paragraph tags, it wants you to use 133 more. Ted, that is keyword stuffing. It is horrible. I can't believe you'd even recommend. Well, it turns out this is a measurement fact. It's not my opinion that you should use 133 more. It's actually a measurement fact. So a measurement fact is like the table is 3 feet tall. We can argue all day about whether or not 3 feet tall is a good height for a table, but the table being 3 feet tall is a measurement fact. We generally check the measurement twice and we don't debate about it anymore. These are measurement facts. The fact that it's telling you to add 133 more means that I can go to my overview. Let me find that factor. That was variations in P tags. So I can go to my measurement data. So here I am in yellow with 3, and here's number 1 at 136. It's not my opinion that they rank better than me, and it's not my opinion that they use that much more than me. Those are measurement facts. And so when I go to the roadmap, all of these are measurement facts. My higher ranking competitors simply used that much more of these factors. That's the difference between my tuning and theirs. That's how we're different, and they rank better. And when we eliminate these factor deficits, it turns out that's a really good way to compete. Your rankings tend to go up when you eliminate your differences with higher ranking content. Now, isn't that over optimization? Won't I be over optimizing my page? Well, they're using that much more than you, and they got punished all the way to number 1. So the most important question in SEO is, if they can do it, why can't I? You know, we hear SEOs all the time. Oh, if you add 50,000 links, you will de-index your website. True, you probably will, but there's nothing bad about 50,000 links. There are lots of websites that outrank you that have millions of links. And if they can do it, why can't I? And it's more of a question of how, you know, how does the system work? So if somebody is telling you that 200 keyword uses is spammy and that'll get you delisted, well, they don't understand the system. Because I can, let's see, where did I put it? Let me pull this back up here. I can type in games, and we can go below the ads to number 1. All right, let's look at their page. There is barely any visual text content on here. So whatever they're doing is largely underneath the page, right? They're number 1, and they're mostly graphics. All right, so we view source. And let's wrap the text, and let's search for our exact match. And they have 2,729 exact matches. And they got punished all the way to the top. Now, how do they get away with it? I'll tell you how they get away with it, or at least how I think they get away with it. And my guesses are pretty good. I think first and foremost, they don't mislead the searcher. Their page is about games, their searchers want games, they're offering games, and they're tuning for games. They might be aggressively tuning for games, but that may not be entirely their fault. Their competition might be in an SEO tuning arms race, and they're all reacting to each other, and it's gotten to this point. So they're not misleading anyone. They're not harming anyone. Searchers like what they're seeing when they visit their website. They rank well. They have traffic. They have trust signals. They're accountable for their content. They have content users like. You know, they're just firing on all cylinders. And so when you have those diversity of ranking signals, you just rank one. So they have the diversity. They have their entities, they have their LSIs. When you go through their page, they have puzzle games and sports games and shooting games. And so they've got all their relevant entities. And so, yeah, they just do well. And so a lot of people have outrage when they see that Cora says, hey, you know, according to the data, you need to use your variations 300 times to compete. You know, that's just a measurement fact. It's because they're beating you by using that much more. And if you did everything that a Cora report told you to do, it still wouldn't be over optimization because you'd only be tied for first place in those factors. You actually have to exceed this advice to take the lead.
John's asking, do you drip these into the site over a period of time, or can you do all 133 at the same time?
When it's my website, I knock it all out all at once. And then when I get the Google dance and I fall 90 positions, that's when I turn to Lee Witcher. I'm like, high fives, man, it's coming. Because we know what Google dance is. That's Google reprocessing the page because the change was too big. But we know the changes were good. So we generally know it's going to come back to where it was or better. And so, you know, if you see and understand Google Dance for what it is, it doesn't have to be a scary thing. But when you're doing client SEO, or if you're an in-house with an employer, then don't trigger Google Dance because you'll scare them. They won't understand it. They'll see that you've fallen 90 positions for 2 weeks and they'll think you're bad at your job. It's just the nature of how that works. So if you're doing these changes, take smaller bites for clients. Just take smaller bites, go slower. And it works out well that way because your engagements are probably based on months, and you can see the numbers and you can say, look, I have these numbers. I don't want to change too much because that can be scary for you. I can divide this up into n months. You can actually divide the numbers that you have into how many months you think it would be to safely do the work. You can cost out this work. You have the work you need to do. You can come up with a realistic cost for what it's going to take. And a lot of the times people are like, well, you have a 3-month contract for $1,500. So, you know, work your magic. You know, that's a one price for all problems. Well, not all problems are the same amount of work. I used Cora data and I was looking at various services in the Seattle, you know, Pacific Northwest region. I was looking at Seattle and Linwood and Bellevue and Olympia. And Olympia is like the smallest one of those four, smallest town, should have been the easiest one. It was off the chart difficult. It was crazy difficult. I was looking at the numbers, makes no sense why Olympia is so much harder than everywhere else. Well, it actually does. You know what was in Olympia at the time I did that? Clint Butler. Cora customer drove up everything sky high, made Olympia his own personal fiefdom. So yeah, if you have the data, you would know that, oh shit, it's going to be a fight for Olympia. How long?
That's cute.
Yeah, somebody's asking, how long does it take to run one of these reports? It depends on your hardware. There are people running it on 40 core supercomputers, and they can sometimes get their reports in about 2 minutes. I develop it on 4 core PCs and Macs, just kind of moderately modern 4 core systems. And they tend to run in 10, 15 minutes per report. And it depends what features you enable, and it depends on your keywords. So if you're pulling up a keyword that's all, 30 linear foot skyscraper pages, those take more time to analyze than, say, thin, category pages for ecom. So your keyword can matter too in the runtime. And so just briefly going through some of this, like a lot of people notice the colors. The colors are the shared data. Let me show you the shared data briefly. So let me see if I can make that larger.
While you're doing that, Ted, let's just remember that everybody that is here, when we're finished, we're going to give everybody a bonus, which is we'll run a free report for them on their one site.
So we have this shared data report, and this is a snapshot of the community shared data at the time you ran your report. And this data tells us things about how broadly applicable these factors are and how they're being used across thousands of keywords. So I know, for example, when I look at variations in the HTML tag, so that's your overall level of variation stuffing on the page, I know that it's 96% applicable to all keywords. Like that factor is going to be a strong factor everywhere you go. And then we have this, what's the #1 max? So what's the maximum factor measurement found in the #1 spot on Google across thousands of keywords? Turns out it's about 67,000 variations on a single page in the #1 spot on Google. That's how far you can push this factor and still rank #1, because it happened. That's egregious. I wouldn't start there, but somebody did it and they got punished all the way to #1 for doing it. On average, page one average, across thousands of keywords, people are tuning this to 252. So I know in general how it's being used. I know how far they've pushed it and still got to #1. I know how many keywords it's a strong factor for. When you look at this list, the top of the list is diversity factors. The number of top 100 factors used, number of distinct entities used, the overall number of factors used, number of unique LSI used. These are all diversity factors. It's your diversity of signals, and it's the strongest thing measured for years. So if you are using a handful of factors, you are putting yourself at a disadvantage. There's a web spam algorithm called MC4, and what MC4 says is that if you exploit a minority of factors, that the algorithm should ignore those for just you. And so we all know the SEO that got, 100 links and his website went up and he thought this is awesome. So he got a couple thousand links and his website went way up and he's like, woohoo, I'm the best SEO on earth. Got 10,000 links. It went even further, got 50,000 links and his site tanked. That's an MC4 response. That's MC4 saying, hey, this site, all they're doing is gassing up backlinks. So we're just not going to count backlinks for that guy. And what people end up doing is they end up saying, well, I'm going to I just tanked my website, too many backlinks. I'm going to start doing link removal requests. I'm going to disavow those backlinks now, when really what they needed is diversity. If you diversify your ranking signals, you get to exploit your backlinks more. And so we got to change our thinking because of this data and start thinking about diversity instead of over optimization. You want to go wide in signals before you go deep in any one signal. And if you make the mistake of going deep first, then these web spam algorithms catch you. Go wide first. A shared factor, this list is the shared factor data. So when it says the number of top 100 shared factors used, we're literally talking about the top 100 of this list itself. How many of those are you using? Number one spot is using 51 of those top 100. You can beat that, use 52. On average, they're using 26. That sucks. And check this out. Here's my top SEO factors website. I highlight the zeros. You turn those zeros into one. Not only is it the least amount of SEO you can do on a factor, literally the least amount, but it's diversity. Correcting zeros is addressing diversity. All right, so the colors in the roadmap, they represent that shared data. The green ones are broadly applicable everywhere you go, any keyword. The red ones were broadly applicable anywhere you go, but they were missing in this report. So if you imagine this report without the red ones and you're a seasoned Cora user, you'd be saying, what should I be seeing here that I'm not seeing here? And that's the red ones. Well, why aren't they being used? Well, your competitors make mistakes. So if you copy your competitors' moves, you're copying their mistakes too. So we're pointing out their mistakes. These are broadly applicable everywhere, but your competitors weren't aggressively tuning them. And so the red ones, I find, are magic. Because if your competitors aren't aggressively competing on those, any advantage you maintain in those red ones, you tend to maintain for a long time. Because either they don't know to compete in that way, or they're too lazy to compete in that way, or they're only looking at the green signals and that's what they're tuning. So the red ones are where you tend to get advantage that sticks, and I love that. Let's see, survivorship, bias detection, mind blown. Yeah, there's a lot academically going on here. So the black ones are not applicable everywhere you go. So just keep that in mind. They're not applicable everywhere. So they may be flukes, they may be niche dependent, but they were strong correlations, so they're here. We point them out. So we want to address everything that might give us advantage, and we make sure we have them here. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Ted, correlation isn't causation. But it really implies it. So think about what we're doing here. So we're not trying to prove definitively that Google has hand-coded these into the algorithm. All we're trying to do is we have a list of 13,000 factors we could spend time on, and we're reducing that list of 13,000 things to work on to a list of 2 or 3 dozen likely suspects. What are the odds that we're going to get some hits in this reduced concentrate of likely suspects? Because we're using math to narrow down the field to the ones that appear to influence rankings, we don't need them all to be causal. We just need our guesses to be better than your guesses. And it's a numbers game. So while you're picking from 13,000 possibilities because you have no data, I'm picking from the likely suspect list. And my hits nearly always hit. And so keep in mind that, you know, if you're gonna attack the stats, then I'm gonna compare our results, because at the end of the day, it's about making good predictions. And when people use this software the way I instruct them to use it, by and large, people see improvements and rapid improvements. When you do this type of tuning, when Google's in good working order, you can generally see improvements like 2 to 10 days later. And when Google's in perfect operating health, you will see ranking improvements within 24 to 48 hours. Like, it can be that fast. You don't have to wait months to see incremental improvement. And so that's why I want to teach these methods, because they work. They absolutely work. And we see it in the field, and we've seen it from case study after case study after case study, that people who do it get good results. And you've all seen it. You know, most of you have heard about Kyle Roof's lorem ipsum experiment, where he took Latin boilerplate and he did the relevancy math that I'm showing you. He peppered it all throughout his content, did the right relevancy math, and ranked the page to #1. He's repeated that in other cities, and he's got it, and it's still #1 today. After all of Google's updates, after their big web spam update, after all of it, helpful content update, all of it, that's still how it works today. Google is ranking based on the relevancy math. And so keep in mind that there are multiple things to consider. Now, I'm not saying that quality content is bad. It's not. But think about the whole thing holistically. You need to think like an algorithm to get good rankings, so you get that free organic traffic. But then you need to think like a human being to get the sale. So you need both. All right. You need to think like an algorithm to get the opportunity, where you can then use your quality content and psychology to win a sale, to get that conversion.
Couple questions, Ted.
Sure.
What is an example of an entity in an H tag?
All right. Entities are nouns, and they're generally nouns that will have a Wikipedia page. So if I look at entities, they come from public databases like Freebase and Wikidata, and Google has their own internal one. But you can actually look up the things that Google's natural language processing contextually understands. Now, when you use entities, you need to understand that Google is using them, collections of them, to form topics. So when I say crust, brown sugar, cook time, apple, cinnamon, flour, what do you think I'm talking about? What's my page about? Well, if you thought apple pie or a baking recipe of some sort, spot on. That's what Google's doing with entities. Collections of entities bring you topical relevance. So if your page doesn't use those relevant entities, then you won't have that topical relevance. And we can see in Google, if we go back here and we say types of frogs, let's see if we can get Google to show them. So here we go. We have some entities here. All right, these have Wikipedia pages, and we have seen over time that they do different amounts of visibility into the entities. At times you can do things like types of bags. Let's see if that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they have those cards for the entities, sometimes they won't. Let's do types of tools. And sometimes we have to coax Google into showing. So sometimes we put it into the inspection mode. We make it responsive. Let's go back to 100%. Let's do a search. Now we get the entity cards for it. So before, Google didn't want to show it, but I switched to a different mode where Google does show their hand. And now they have entities showing up. So you can oftentimes trick Google into telling you what the entities are. You can also look them up, but be careful when you look up entities for plumbing and you go to Wikipedia to find all the things Wikipedia says. You want closely related to what you're ranking for. You don't care about the Latin origin of plumbing being the Latin word for lead. You don't care about the Roman viaducts. Don't get drawn off page by picking irrelevant entities. Not all entities give you topical relevance. So, and the way you use them, pick and choose the ones that make sense for your content, pepper them throughout your content, you ignore the rest. Same thing with LSI. Like I've seen it a million times where people are like, LSI keywords are a scam. You're a darn fool if you use LSI keywords. Well, people who say that things, I don't think you know what you're talking about. The reason I don't think you know what you're talking about is that they represent the same thing. LSI keywords and entities both represent words that co-occur on pages that rank well. It's just that entities are discovered via natural language processing and LSI keywords are discovered statistically. They both represent the same thing. And people who say, well, I would only use entities and never LSI. Well, the entities are only available in about a dozen languages right now. So if you have a client in Vietnam, they're not going to get the entity data. And thank goodness there's LSI keywords because the two lists have a lot of overlap. And so they are very necessary in any context where the entities won't be available to you. Quick hack though, if you are in Vietnam and you want the entities, run your keywords in English and translate them to Vietnamese. That's another way of doing it. All right, so back to this roadmap, let's look at some of the phases. So phase one, titles and headings, the numbers, the amount of tuning you need, pretty low on each. You'll knock that out pretty quickly. Phase two, your overall content. These numbers, a lot bigger. It's going to slow you down. It's a bit harder to address. Phase four, factor diversity. You're going to have to think more on factor diversity. It's not brain dead dumb to just solve that. You need to think about how you're going to address these areas of diversity where you have deficits. You get to search result presentation. It's easy to tune for this if you have a new site or a new page, but if you're working with an existing page, it's very hard to change the URL. Don't recommend doing it. So oftentimes it's starting to get really difficult at this point because there are things you can't do to existing pages. Outbound linking. Your clients might not let you put outbound links on their pages. They might not see the point or the value. You're going to have to negotiate it. Now you have a hurdle of negotiating with the client to get the tuning done. When we start to look at social integration, that might require web development. Getting more images onto the site, that might require licensing so they don't get sued. When we start looking at other places, modifying script tags, using nav tags, maybe the theme doesn't use it. Now you're doing a theme change or web development. You can see it's starting to get harder and harder. So it's super easy tuning up at the top, But as you work down the phases, it gets more and more serious. And so, I would kind of look at my cost of time, and, I'd probably make service levels based on what phases we get into. So, phase 1, phase 2, into phase 4, yeah, that's a great starting package. But if you need to get hardcore in competing, these are really hard. These are going to take time and effort to knock out from there. So that might be a different package at a higher level. And then the amount, like, when to stop on these. So for example, entities and sentences, I only need 162 more. And if you're not measuring this data, you could easily put in thousands. You could spend time going well beyond that. You could be number one for that factor, not know it, and keep tuning it. Knowing when to stop, I mean, that's your margin in SEO, right? So yeah, and what I tell people is even though there's all these reports, there's so much data here, I could overwhelm you to death. I want you to spend 95% of your time on the roadmap. If you're not spending 95% of your time addressing these deficits, you're not doing the work that helps you compete. Everything you need to compete is here, because the differences between you and the competitors, the higher ranking competitors you've chosen, those differences are all laid out here. So this is how you address those differences and compete. And in a nutshell, that's what I want you to do. Even though there are so many other reports here, I don't need you to spend all your time. They're there if you need to dig deeper in those areas, but your real competition is here. Make sense?
Absolutely. We have like 18 questions.
All right, let's do some questions.
Does the software look at all the search results above where the target site is ranking, or just the top 10 for the keyword that you're searching for?
Cora actually has two functions. So it is going to analyze the top 100. And so it's going to do that to find out which factors are influencing rankings. Then once we've identified the factors that move the needle, then we're going to look closely at your chosen competitors, and we're going to form the tuning recommendations based only on the competitors you've chosen. So you control where your advice is coming from. All right, is there more questions? I lost my place on the...
No, I'll find it. I just got 3 things going on at once here. Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you, yeah, you talked about the entities, the H tags as an example. Best of the best and so forth. So let me apple pie. Okay, quickly see if Google recognizes the entity in your heading, paste the text in and let the process and score the salience. That was from Rich. So go down to about 257 and you can start there.
All right.
While you're looking.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So so Google, he posted a link. All right. Yeah, there's a number of tools out there that can help you do these things. And Cora for entities is using the TextRaiser API, which is free. So if you do use Cora, sign up for that free API. That's all you need. And we get the entities. And TextRaiser is built on Google's NLP stack. So in theory, it's the same tech they ought to be using.
Just above that, if you do this for the client, and this happens quite frequently to us, right? and you get them where they want to be and you want them to be, and they quit paying you, do they keep the rank and you get them too, or what? Can you go back in here and what do you do at that point?
Well, it all depends on how you structure your SEO service. So if you've built systems where you can take the SEO when you leave, then you're set there. If you don't build those systems, then I would assume the SEO stays where it was done. But you know, the key thing to remember is that if you give people good results, like if they find that you can quickly rank keywords, I mean, they'd be foolish to let you go, because most of the other SEOs they work with are going to take months and not get anywhere. So, you know, if you do good work and you find good clients, they're not going to want to let you go.
Okay, scrolling down, Rich, you know, put a pro tip in here. It says when you search in Google Trends, anytime it offers a trend result on a topic or a category, those will be entities.
Yes.
Look at the URL of the trend, and the actual entity ID will be in the URL.
Yeah, and the same is often true in the Google search results when you coax out the entity cards. If you look at the source, Google will even label them as entities in the source code. And so we know that Google's working with entities. Their source code is kind of confessed.
Gotcha. Last question in here right now. Brian Weathers says, if I'm ranked number 10 for a keyword, would I not only be concerned with the 9 sites above me? Why would the sites below me matter much? That's a great question.
Well, oftentimes I won't even care about all 9 sites above me. My default mode of operation is I look at spots 1, 2, and 3 because they're in my spot. And so the way I kind of view it, this whole notion of, well, do I find sites that are a lot like mine, or do I go for the gold and go for 1, 2, 3? I view that as long-term versus short-term goals. So when you find, you know, sites closer to you that are more like you, you're looking for quick wins. When you go for spots 1, 2, and 3, and they might not be exactly what you're doing, you're going for the gold. What do I need to do to get to the top? Because eventually you have to beat them. You have to beat them in their directory sites. You have to beat them in their Amazon. You have to beat them. You have to beat them with their content using your content. And that's the name of the game. And it's doable. Like there's a lot of people that give up when they see big box stores and they see big directories. But more and more with seasoned Cora people, they see it and go, oh, it's a weak keyword. I know how to get past those. And the fact that those are at the top means I don't have a serious SEO competitor. They're leveraging some domain authority on an inner page, and that's not full authority of the homepage. That's just whatever trickled down. We can beat that. And so, you know, seasoned people, you know, they see Yelp at the top, they see Amazon at the top, and all of a sudden that's a green light. This keyword's a go. But people who haven't learned those lessons, they see it and go, oh, they have all the authority in the world. I can never compete. Well, their homepage does. But that Amazon product page, it probably doesn't have 5, 10 backlinks to it. It's probably a goose egg on backlinks. So the only thing that's helping that Amazon page is whatever's trickling down to it. And that's not much. I find I can oftentimes beat Amazon product pages with as few as 25 backlinks. But you wouldn't know unless you go toe-to-toe with them and actually try.
And like you say, how many people just give up because it's Amazon or it's, you know, Best Buy or whatever, right?
Yeah. And I made a 17-year career of competing with Amazon pages and online retail. And there was something magical about 25 backlinks. In general, 25 backlinks was the thing to hit to compete with an Amazon product page.
Would the same thing be for Angie's List and, the Legion, Yelp, and the rest of them?
Yeah, because Amazon was usually at the top of the group. So you'd pass the other related ones. And same thing with directories. Those
Okay.
leaf node pages have no allocation of backlinks. It's only the tree trunk that does, it's not the leaves. You can compete with the leaves. And so, sometimes there were tough ones. If you find a branded keyword, those are different. So if you look for Sony HD TVs, that's going to be a harder one to get than, say, sterling silver amethyst bracelet, unbranded keyword. You're going to annihilate them if you get a handful of backlinks.
All right. Cool.
So-
So for everybody that's here, that, discussion that we just had, give me a, well, 1, if that was something that was really relevant to you, or, give me a 5 if you already knew all this stuff. We have a mixture of people, like Cato will probably give me a 10, right? Instead of a 5. Is like, he's Mr. Cora too, he thinks. He's awesome. So next question. Love you, Brian. Can you talk more about MC4? I can't find any information about that algo.
Yeah, that that algorithm came to my attention through a weird chain of events. So I have advisors. One of my advisors in statistics, and they do clinical trials for cancer research. So real academic rigor type statistics. And he was with a pharmaceutical company in a meeting, and they were having problems getting some genetic noise out of their study. And an advisor for the pharmaceutical also worked at Google, said, hey, we have this algorithm called MC4 that does the same thing for spammy noise in our data sets. It could probably help yours. So I went and researched it, and we don't know if Google is exactly using MC4. All right, they might be, they might not be. But whatever web spam algorithm they have, it behaves like MC4, and we can trigger it, and it behaves in ways that MC4 would behave. So whatever they're doing for web spam algorithm, it may not exactly be MC4, but it sure does behave like MC4. It might be based on MC4. And so that's really where it stops, is that there was a chain back to somebody at Google who knew about it and claimed that they use it within their organization in some capacity, not specifically search. But we see MC4 like behaviors all over search.
Cool. Mike's asking, when and why would I want to use the HTML report?
Well, there are numerous ones. So I think he's talking about the content report that Cora produces, which is kind of a way of looking at the top 100 search results all in one view. So you could see the top 100 search results titles all together. You could see all their H3s all together. You could see, let me look at all the images from the top 100 pages in a stream. Let me see all the videos that were posted in the top 100 results. So you could use it like if you were making an authoritative web page on jQuery plugins, and you could find all of those cited in the headings. So when you scan the keyword and look at the headings, you'd see all the plugin names, you'd have your list. Boom, you just curated a listicle. If you are trying to find an authoritative set of tutorial videos on domain migration, you could search the keyword, get all the videos, boom, 20 videos on domain migration, done. If you wanted to see if people are weakly tuning their H3s and having read mores in them or things like that, boom, there you go. We also have the keyword parking tool, which gets a bit more gray hat. You know, there's a lot in there, but it can spin fair use content. So the open graph data and the published videos and RSS feed entries, you can randomize those and spin them and generate keyword rich content for a keyword. So if you're doing tiered link building, here's something relevant you can put in the tiers instantly. Yeah, there's a million ways to use the information, and people like Clint Butler and Lee Witcher are innovating new techniques for taking this data to whole new levels. It's amazing.
Awesome. Paul's asking, how do you use Cora7 Pro for Google Maps?
All right, so let me pull up Cora7 Pro. All right, so with Cora7 Pro here, the thing we'd want to do is to search for Google Maps. Then we'd want to search for something like restaurants. And map search isn't going to use the near localization, so we wouldn't say near Las Vegas, Nevada, or anything like that. It does use the country and the language, and it uses latitude and longitude. So I could say near the Space Needle, and these named pairs are in the settings, so you can make your own named pairs, client 1, client 2, where you want to search from. My recommendation on clients, if you're doing local SEO, is do not only their latitude and longitude of their business, but if you can identify their home address, where they often search and check things from home, check from there too, just in case. And so you could have client 1, office, and client 1 home, and switch between those, and you can see what they're seeing in local search. And then from here, we're doing this number of searches thing. Going to reduce that to 1, and we can just do a search. And it all goes through APIs, so you don't need proxies. And now we have local results, and it defaulted to number 20. So we would find our local result, or we'd force a URL to be number 100 for the analysis. And then we just press get data to generate the report. So if we agree with our competitors, which is going for the gold, I want to do that. This is the URL I want recommendations for. Maybe it's that one. Then I'm ready to roll. I run the report. And then when I finish the report, let me see if I can find one. Here we go. Put it on the right screen. So here's one for local. You will see that there's phase 5. So we still analyze, even in local, we still analyze your web page compared to the others. But you get this phase 5, which is your Google Maps business profile. And we start talking about the switches and subtypes you're missing. Oh, you forgot to do brew pub on yours, on your subtype. So you're losing traffic because you didn't have that. Or your brew pub didn't designate that it's a hamburger restaurant because you serve hamburger. You got to get your subtypes right to maximize your traffic. So we're telling you things that you've missed. Oh, you didn't enable the switch for your liquor license. So when people are looking for restaurants that serve alcohol, you're not getting those unless you activate that switch. And so we're able to point out what your competitors have that you've overlooked. And getting that completeness is I'm already hearing from people that it's getting results. And we're learning every day more and more about local. And so we have, let's see. Let me scroll over. So we have the local report, which shows you all of the local factors and all of the measurement data for them. So the blue ones are where you're getting your butt kicked. So that's how much you're getting your butt kicked by and who's doing the butt kicking. Anytime I see red for my website, that's where I'm getting beaten. That's where the competition is rightfully beating me. So it's all right there. Have a service area report. So we're pulling from geodatabases, and these are ranked from in miles. So closest service areas out to about 100 miles, I think. So if you want the authoritative list of canonical service areas within 5 miles, that's right there. If I want to go out to 10 miles, that's down to here. Those are the service areas I need to put in schema. So we're doing that research for you. Not only that, but we're also doing, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. So we are also creating HTML content. So these are all of the restaurants that were in the search results. But, I could do some black hat tricks with these, but I'd rather have landmarks. I'd rather just have geo-relevant signals. So maybe I want a list of landmarks around my business. Boom, landmarks. And these are links. So I got links to the reviews, links to the driving directions, to the landmarks. You can view it in maps directly, got the address for all these attractions. Now, all of a sudden, I have content that I can put on a page that helps tell Google I'm about this location. Same thing with tourist attractions. Now I have a list of the closest tourist attractions to the business I'm tuning for. Same level of detail. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton in here for local, and we're looking on adding more and more, and we want to make it a powerful tool. And you still get all the on-page analysis with it as well. Another thing I'd like to point out is that the volatility tool, they used to be separate. I used to charge $100 a month for this tool itself separately. It's built into Cora7 Pro. So you can run a volatility report, and I'll do that because it only takes a minute. Let's do Seattle plumber. All right, and I am going to say run. And so what this tool is going to do is it's going to do 10 searches, because I said do 10 back to back. So it's going to take about a minute here to run. But it's going to tell us about the volatility in this keyword. And it can tell us about keyword cannibalization. It can tell us about Google's rewriting of link text and summary text that's often pulled from titles and meta descriptions. It can tell us about tie ranking conditions. It can tell us when our rankings are weak or really, really strong. And so this notion of understanding volatility, I've spent the last 2 years studying volatility in Google, and this software is the result of that research, and I'm proud to say it's part of Cora now. All right, so the report. Seattle Plumber just ran it right now. And so what we can see in this data is we have the rankings that happened. And so they're largely stable, but if you look at this one, you can see that, in under a minute, it's going 3, 4, 4, 3, 4, 3, there's some volatility in there. And as we go down, these are charts of the volatility. We can see that volatility tends to increase. It's largely dialed in, but see right there where it's all X's and a 94, Google was testing a result. That is only in search 10% of the time. So when we read these probabilities, the first number, this one in red, is what percentage of searches is it appearing in? And so for this example, it's 50%. We call that time sharing because the rest of the time, somebody else is in your spot. And what's the most common rank position? Well, in this example, they're 40% at number 19 with the worst case of 21. We find that people oftentimes, they'll get a website, and if you've been in SEO long enough, you've seen this. They get a website and they rush to tell the client about how they got the ranking to number 14. They're like, man, you're going to be so psyched. I finally got us to number 14. The client goes and Googles it. And they're like, we're still number 24. Like nothing has changed. We're 24. I just did the search. We're 24. Why do you suck so much? Well, the reason is that it's a probability. You don't always rank what you last measured. That's one sample, and it could have been a lucky roll of the dice. It could have been an average roll of the dice, or it could have been an unlucky roll. And if you get a lucky roll of the dice and rush to tell the client, you're likely to get fired. And so we want you to present rankings to clients as a probability. Hey, 40% of the time you're number 19, and that's better than where you were before, which was 75% of the time at 21. And that way they know that they need to check a few times. And the crazy thing about time sharing, you see this 10%, that means they're in 10% of searches. This can happen when you're number 4. You can be number 4 and in 10% of searches. And then you can SEO the page. You're going to SEO the page. You're going to do a bunch of on page, and you got some links, and you're doing all this quality stuff. And your rankings are going to go from number 4 all the way over to number 4. You didn't even move the needle in rankings. But you can turn that 10% into 100%. And in number 4, that's a 10x on the organic traffic. You can 10x the organic traffic with your SEO, not move the ranking. And if you're not looking at it, you don't know to brag about it to the customer. If you're not looking, you simply do not know. And so there are times you are SEOing the pages and you are fixing these problems. You are 10xing their organic traffic, but because the ranking didn't move, you get no credit for it, no recognition, no love. Heck, you might even be fired for not moving rankings fast enough. That little 10x you didn't know to report on could have saved your job. But you're not looking. So yeah, this is built in. This is part of Cora. We want people looking at it. Cannibalization, YouTube cannibalizing itself. We show you how they're mixing it up. Here's a website, the Seattle Times. They're 70% this top one, and they're 30% the bottom one. They're not at the same ranking position when they're cannibalizing. They appear at different ranks, and sometimes they're really close. Sometimes they're really far. Sometimes you will cannibalize to number 4, and sometimes you will cannibalize to number 34. But if you're not looking, you won't know. Title variants. So here Google has this Raymark Plumbing, and they're experimenting with 2 different titles. One of them's only 10% of the time. They're both at the same ranking, so it's not a big deal, but sometimes it is. Same thing with the description text. So we're seeing description text volatility. Don't see great examples of ranking differences, but sometimes they're there. And keyword variations. I mentioned keyword variations are important. Well, sometimes they're not at 100%. Sometimes they fall short. Sometimes DUI by itself for the search DUI lawyers Los Angeles won't appear as a variation. Google will try to mess you up that way. But we detect it. And not only that, Cora handles all this volatility. So when we go into Cora, we can say, I want you to search 5 times. Let's use a weighted average ranking and tune out Google's random testing. Weight it lower in the results. And because we're doing that, we don't get fooled by the volatility. We tune it out, and our correlation strengths, our signal strength on what moves the needle, it gets stronger. And so, yeah, tuning and accounting for volatility has changed the game.
Well, I can probably imagine most everybody, except for those that are working with the new Cora7, are just gobsmacked, with the data that's available to us through this right now. Seriously. So, I mean, in the chat, just give me a one, just so we understand, is this stuff like an evolution of revolution to your brain, if you haven't been here before and you're not part of the testing team and know about, the new Cora7? I mean, seriously, this is, pretty amazing stuff.
And the way I want you to approach it is I want you to get the training so you can hit the ground running. All right, because it's really hard to succeed at anything when you haven't been properly trained to do it.
Right.
And then 2, I want you to treat it like an experiment. I want you to find a safe place to experiment. Oh, I have this one blog post that, never quite fired. We can gamble with that. Find a safe place to learn, and let's do it. Let's just treat it like an experiment. Prove to yourself that it works. Because once we get over that hurdle, there's a ton of next level stuff we can do. But we need you to understand why this works. We need you to figure it out. And the only way you can do it, there's nothing I can do. There's no proof I can give you. This is a journey you must prove to yourself. And so if you try Cora out, get the training, treat it like an experiment, and prove for yourself that it can work. And when that happens, the results I see from people are amazing. But that's how I want you to prove it. Don't take my word.
Right.
Don't take everybody else's word. Treat it like an experiment.
Well, I'm gonna ask Rod to put the form in here for getting the free report. And also, if you guys are interested in the buy link to pick this up with the discount that Ted has given today, 25% off, which is amazing.
Yeah. And there's an important caveat on that. I don't want to cause too much fear, but there is a little fear. All right. The price is going up. It's not going up in a short term. It'll be like 4 to 6 weeks from now. So you have some time. All right. But I just want to make you aware that it's going up for new subscriptions. So existing customers will be able to sustain the price they're currently at. So if you want to lock in the lower price with the affiliate discount, you have a few weeks to do that. But then price is going to go up. So I don't want you to miss the opportunity. If you are at all interested in this, be mindful that there is a time on locking in the low price.
And you guys are here now, and probably, like you said, in the next couple of weeks, whenever you're going to increase it. And, not only that, we're going to give everybody the opportunity to get your own free report and analyze it. And we might even have an internal webinar ourselves, not with Ted, but just with some of the people in our group that use it, to kind of have a one-off webinar to go over this one more time and some more questions and answers. So a couple other questions and then we'll wrap it up. I mean, gosh, we could go on here forever, but Brian's not Brian, but Brian Weathers is asking, since the search algo is different than the GMV maps algo, if I make lots of changes, core suggestions suggest that I make, will I gain rank organically or will I gain rank in maps into the 3-pack as well?
Yes. What we have noticed over time is that the overall degree of SEO tuning you have on your website does impact your maps ranking as well. So we want you to tune your on page in addition to your business profile. And so, yeah, don't neglect either, do both.
Okay, so next question is, so any type of backlink can be that 25 backlinks you were talking about, or should they be authority backlinks? You don't necessarily want to do PBN backlinks, I would imagine, right?
Well, here's the thing. All right, prepare to have your mind recalibrated. Okay, so
Again?
yes, we have PageRank, right? That's Google's invention, PageRank, and it goes from PageRank 0 all the way up to PageRank 10. And it's a logarithmic scale, which is the fancy way of saying powers of 10. So to get from PageRank 1 to PageRank 2, you need 10 times as many links. To get from PageRank 2 to PageRank 3, you need 10 times many again. And so that's what it is. It's powers of 10 on how many backlinks you have. Okay. By the time you get to about PageRank 6, and I've walked this journey, I've walked websites from PageRank 0 all the way to PageRank 8. That's what I've been able to do over the course of my career. By the time you get to about PageRank 6, and I know this because at the time I did it, PageRank was published in the toolbar. So if you're wondering, how do I know? Because they stopped. That's how I knew at the time. By the time you get to PageRank 6, you can no longer do manual link building. You know, the best manual link building you can do will get you to PageRank 6. You just need so many more links that you can't do it. You can't buy guest posts. You can't do it. You need to go viral. You need television advertising, or you need very black hat capabilities to go from 6 to above. And most people are going to do it with viral marketing. They're going to give a reason for everyone to link and shop. And so that's kind of where you can do it. Most of us, when we do link building, we're trying to get a good start. We're taking a page that's PageRank 0 and we wanted it to be treated like a PageRank 3. That's kind of the general area where link building has its useful application, is getting a good start, but you eventually outgrow it. One of the interesting aspects of outgrowing link building is that the higher you go on the PageRank ladder, the more your backlink profile turns into absolute garbage. You take that PageRank 8, you look at their 12.5 million backlinks, because that's what it took for me to get to the bottom of PageRank 8, where I teeter 7, 9 to 8 was about 12.5 million. You look at those backlinks and most of them are garbagey trash. You can look at people that have PageRank 8 or better today, look at their backlink profiles, you'll find lots of garbagey trash. The reason being is because by the time you get that many links, your average link is looking like an average internet backlink. Average internet backlinks have very low quality. Your backlink profile turns to garbage the higher you go on the PageRank ladder. Maintaining a quality backlink profile is a small website's game, and it's very unnatural. So when you only have the best of the best links and nothing else, that isn't naturally occurring. And to exceed where you're at, you're going to have to break that. You're going to have to become more natural. So at the end of the day, when you get to PageRank 7, when you get to PageRank 8, the atomic unit you're using, it's average web backlinks. How many average web backlinks do you have? Now, is it good to get a homepage footer link from a PageRank 8 website? Yes, that's a quality link. We can't all get those. But at the end of the day, the thing that's going to get you there is average web backlinks. That's it.
Very cool. What is the best method that you know of to get more of my images to show on Google image searches? I mean, like hundreds of them for a specific. I know this is Scott, a friend of ours, and he is awesome in crafting gift boxes and wine boxes and those types of gifts. And so we've been working with him on optimizing his images and making sure that they're getting out there. So that's what his question is coming from. That's the background of it.
Well, you want to try to make sure that they're not syndicated images that are appearing in multiple places. So if you're syndicating your pages through RSS feeds, you might be shooting yourself in the foot. So don't let people beat you to Google with your own content. And then make sure that they're keyword rich. Make sure that you're doing the metadata. Make sure that the URLs have keywords. Oftentimes it's good if you have a dedicated page for each image. So having a product page naturally solves that. But if you don't have a store, it's some other type of site. Try to find a way to get a dedicated page for the image, and then you can tune that for what it needs to be for image search. Make sure that they're unique to your site. So if you're pulling other people's photos and trying to rank for them, you're probably going to get filtered on that, unless you can establish yourself somehow as the canonical source for it. But again, that's really hard to do. So think of it in terms of uniqueness, think in terms of it as contextual relevance, and try to have a dedicated lens for tuning it so it can be what it needs to be to rank well.
Cool. Thank you. Somebody just said, saved another 200 bucks. All right. Can you run volatility over hours instead of seconds?
Yeah, not only that, I sometimes will run the volatility tool and get a folder, and in the settings here, there's an animate folder. So it'll take 10 or 20 volatility reports that you've put in your archive, and it'll let you animate them as an animation, and you could watch it in time lapse.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, we've done a lot of research into it, and the time lapse is fascinating. You will learn a lot about how crazy volatile Google is. Doesn't tell you a lot about tuning. It just tells you how chaotic search can be.
In reference to that, is that next question was, is it scraped from Google SERPs or via the API?
Yes to both. The API is going direct to Google SERPs, so I can show that. Let me find that volatility report again. If I go to the top, hit view SERPs, you can actually see the various searches we conducted. So we have them all here. So if there's an anomaly in one, like in search 9 and 10, it changed a bit there. We can go and see the anomaly. And so part of it is, yes, demonstrating that we actually got these from Google.
Gotcha. Can you do the same for map rankings for a keyword with the volatility?
No, not yet. You can't
Okay.
do this for maps yet. This is just for organic web search at the moment. But we suspect that there is also volatility in local. We just haven't built a tool set for it yet.
This one might be worth a lot of money. You might want to charge extra for this one. Scott's asking, can it save his marriage?
Well, if his marriage is dependent upon him having happy clients, then yes,
Yes.
absolutely.
Scott's a good guy. Okay, so Rich is asking, can you set the duration of the volatility test? Like, what if the volatility only appears over the duration of, say, an hour versus a bunch of searches conducted within 1 minute? Is the vol-
Generally speaking, that's not how it's happening. Every
Okay.
keyword we've tested has had volatility in under a minute. You can do multiple searches over time, and then you just have both the rapid fire data and the, if you go back and check it daily, you'll see it changes daily. If you check it hourly, you'll see volatility hourly. It's because it's ever present. And not only that, you see these purple numbers here? These are tie conditions. So these are scored so closely together that these two websites are effectively a tie. And so when one is 14, the other's 15. And when the other's 15, this one's 14. When this one's 15, that one's 14.
Right.
And so they flip-flop. And the reason they flip-flop is Google is adding a tiny amount of random score every time a search is done. So every time you search, there's a tiny component of random score, and that's how they fairly handle ties. And that way, sometimes you're the winner of the tie, and sometimes you're the loser of the tie. But it's fair. And these tie groups, they can be, a number of websites deep. You could have 10 websites with tie scores, and they'll all randomly shuffle when you research. And what we find with these tie score groupings is that when you do a little tiny bit of on-page tuning for relevance, you usually win the tie. So when I see purple for a client's website, I know there's a quick win I can go after.
That just a few more. Is there any real relevancy in 10 and above in data? Searching for your current positioning, scraping the data for positions 10 and up.
There can be. It depends on the keyword, right? So if you get a keyword like apple pie and it's all big name publishing brands, getting to page 3 is kind of an accomplishment for a keyword like apple pie. If your recipe for apple pie happens to be on page 3 for that keyword, that's actually a remarkable accomplishment. So yeah, absolutely. Being in the game for a keyword like that can be important, because people that research apple pies, they don't stay on page 1. Gotcha. They've seen those popular recipes. They're looking for the gourmet one, and that usually isn't the one they've seen on page 1.
So does that represent the more definitive part of the question was, lexical versus semantic?
Yeah, and so you will find value for some keywords deeper than page 1, but it's kind of more rare because people often don't compete on those hard terms as much, and it's harder to compete on those terms.
Okay. Ted mentioned training real quick, 10, 15 seconds training.
We hop on a Skype call. I have you share your screen. We walk through your settings, make sure your settings are set up properly. I tell you how the UI works, all the buttons and whistles of it, so you know what they all do and when to use them. We run a report, we watch it run and make sure that it's all working properly on your system. Then we open that report and we talk about using the data for your web page. We talk about how you can make it move. And then we usually end it there because it's supposed to be an hour of training and we've hit an hour and a half. But that's what you can expect.
Yeah, John, the buy is not linked to PayPal, it's like to Thrivecart. I'm just scanning through
keep Be
Go
sure
ahead,
you
sorry.
buy the right product. One of those links is for Cora Lite, and
Right.
today I'm showing Cora Pro. So if you're looking to get Cora Pro, make sure you get the affiliate link
Right.
for Cora Pro.
That's the only one that we put in there.
Okay.
Can Cora give me at least 5 or 6 numbers for the next Powerball drawing on Saturday?
It can, but they have the same odds as anybody else's numbers. Unfortunately.
All right. Okay, this is interesting. Position 13 and 14, does that give you as much traffic as position 9 and 10?
No, generally not, but more so since Google has been diminishing organic web results on page 1. So it used to be 10 results on page 1. Now often it's 8 or 9 results on page 1. There's more ads above the fold. There's more channel search, like people also ask, and shopping results and things like that, local pack above the organic web results. What we're finding more and more is you really need to be top 3. It's like if you're not 1, 2, or 3, for all practical purposes, you're page 2.
Gotcha.
So yeah, if you want your best chance of getting good traffic for a keyword, you gotta shoot for the moon.
All right, just a few more and we're gonna call it a day. I mean, I don't know, Terry, are you still here?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. It's one last couple, 2 keywords. I want Terry to chime in for a little bit here. Is there still a need, for finding easy to rank keyword, or Google on page can allow us to rank better for, is there still a need?
Yeah, they're just wondering if they should still be looking for those
Oh, yeah. Okay. Nuggets. Okay.
little nuggets. And there's nothing wrong with getting them, but you're not going to get the traffic you can get if you go for it. If you go for the harder keyword, the closer to the main keyword, you're going to get more traffic. Even if you fail and only get to number 4, is going to be better than number 1 for some of those super long tails.
Yeah.
So it's that whole thing, if you shoot for the stars and you miss, you're still in outer space. Hey, I mean, and with Cora, especially this new Cora, don't worry, don't be afraid of those big keywords. Like I said, if you fail, you're going to be hitting those other ones, and then some. So,
which are probably more than the long tails anyway, right?
Yeah, and nothing wrong with adding extra articles for the long tails if you want them, but like I said, don't be afraid of going for it.
Last questions. Cora, I mean, how many clients can you actually add if we have as an agency 60 clients? You can run unlimited reports for unlimited companies, right, Ted?
Yeah. I don't put arbitrary limits on the number of reports you run. There is a practical limit because reports take time. What a lot of agencies do is they'll put Cora in like the hands of an admin, and they'll have that admin run reports for their team of SEOs. And so that kind of becomes a full-time duty of that admin to handle Cora report processing.
Right. Okay, got one last question. And then Terry, what I'd like you to kind of share is a little bit about what you're doing behind the scenes, okay? So we know that you guys are still in the test mode all the time. So last question, doing red ones first, wait for a few days, then do green ones, wait for a few days, then do black ones, is still required to work? Is that the best workflow?
That's just a matter of your preference. And like Ted said, whether you're working on a site of your own or a client's or stuff like that, how much of those phases you want to do. But, if you've got Cora, you run your report, you see that, you do as much as you're comfortable with at phase 1. And in a few days, you can run the report again. and go, okay, I see we're moving in the right direction. Let me go ahead and, finish out phase one or whatever it happens to be. I wanted to mention, because I was telling Patrick earlier today, those of you that use Ranking Factory tools, one of the nice things about it is Chris, the developer, you can send a message to him and say, is there a way we can do this? And he'll see, and if there's a way it can be done and it's going to be useful results, he'll do it. Ted's the same way. Ted would like to make Cora perfect, but, and it's obvious, Ted is an intellect, right? He's brilliant. He speaks geek and English, but he's only got one pair of eyes. So he's not going to see from every perspective. So in his, with his betas on this, people would say, hey, what would be cool is if the report could tell us this. And sometimes Ted will be like, oh, we can do that. It just never occurred to Ted that would be useful for someone, So like with Ranking Factory, feel confident that you can suggest features to Ted. If you find something that would make life much better for you, odds are it would help other people also. If it's just for you, Ted's going to say, no, that's not time and effort. Just go do the work yourself, but if it's something that can help the community or teach us more so that all those shared factors help everybody. I don't get to see what Ted's running on Cora or Clint or Lee or Carolyn or anybody, but I can see the stuff that's 96% of the sites that rank #1 are using, because a whole bunch of people are doing a variety of different searches. So the more everybody uses it, the more it helps all of us have a better system to tell us better how to beat the big guys. And like I said, you can walk into a potential client and say, oh yeah, not a problem. We can attack that and be confident that you don't have to worry about who's their big competitor, because their big competitor may not have an SEO that tests and uses tested methods. So, you'll be able to beat them, no problem.
Does Ted or Terry suggest using Google Search Console after changes, or should we just update the site map inside WordPress sites, or just wait for Google to reindex?
That's a great question, and the answer isn't the best one, but it's the honest one. Is right now it's really hard. Google's in kind of a weird broken state right now. It's very hard to get new pages indexed. You'll have better luck getting updates to existing pages. We're recommending that people use the indexing API through various WordPress plugins or Excel tools for SEO. You can create a list of links to index and put in your API key there. I like Clint Butler's recommendation of don't trust one path, use multiple indexing solutions. And if you do multiple, your odds are much better. I like that. But even with all of those, I've been still having difficulty getting timely updates right now. Google isn't always like that. We tend to see Google slows down in Q4, and then they miraculously get fixed between December 26th and New Year's. So I kind of expect the same thing to happen this year. It's going to be problematic until the day after Christmas. So, just note that right now when Google's not in great operating condition, it takes a little more time.
All right, very good. Well, thank you guys. Terry, thanks for popping in here. It just never stops, right, Ted? I mean, you've been doing this since day one, and it just every day it gets better and better. And Backlink Factory and Ranking Factory every day, somebody comes like Terry says with a new idea to do this, and okay, so boom, we test it, it works. We test it, it doesn't work, but at least so many eyeballs on what you're doing. You're just one guy, one hell of a guy. I'll say that, right? But you're only one guy.
I'd say probably about 75% of my feature list for any major update came from current customers. So it's largely fueled by customer demand.
Yeah, I would say that we're probably a little bit higher than you. We come, Terry we come out with a base thing and then all of a sudden it's, into the Apollo spaceship, right, Terry?
Yep.
Not just a
Yeah.
simple thing that we started.
And
with,
listen,
so.
if you enjoyed the presentation, try Cora out. If you don't like it, he's not signing you to a contract for a year or 6 years. Give it a try, sit down with him, go through it. And like I said, once that light comes on, you go, oh shit. And the whole new avenue of SEO opens up for you. And if you go to SEO Rockstars, Ted will be there.
Yep.
Normally I'd say buy him a drink, but he's trying to cut down on that a little bit. So, buy him a salad or something. I don't know.
I'll take a drink. It's a special occasion.
Oh, well, there you go. It's a conference. So,
Well, I can give you a testimony, Ted, because Anand is met with you the other day. And I had to read my Skype for about 45 minutes of, oh my God, he took time to do this. And oh my, are you kidding me? He took time to do that, blah, 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 blah. So I'm just from a third party testimony of hearing what Anand said about what you did with him and shared with him and the time that you took with him, I can testify to every single person here, it's worth the time, it's worth the effort, and to have that hour with you. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah. I want you to succeed, and I feel your odds are best when you schedule that hour. So please don't pass that up.
To Ted, this software is a labor of love.
Yep. It's the SEO tool I always wanted and nobody was willing to make for me. So I had to roll up my sleeves and build it myself.
Awesome, guys. But if you want to get a free report, in the chat is opportunity to get that. And the buy button with Ted's generous discount is on there as well.
Take care, guys. Ted,
yeah,
I'll see you next week.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you so much.
All right, see you guys. Appreciate it.